Awareness is the first doorway to any meaningful transformation, and it is often the most overlooked yet essential step in changing our lives. Many people move through their days on autopilot, believing that life is happening to them rather than realizing that their choices, habits, and reactions shape the reality they experience. To awaken awareness, we must first be willing to look honestly at ourselves and the circumstances around us, even when the truths we encounter are uncomfortable or unsettling. This requires courage because awareness often shines a light on the parts of our lives that we have been avoiding. Our fears, our mistakes, our limitations, and the patterns we unconsciously repeat. It is easy to distract ourselves with busyness, noise, or routine, convincing ourselves that things are fine while subtle dissatisfaction builds quietly in the background. Yet nothing changes until we pause long enough to observe what is really happening, to notice the recurring behaviors and thought patterns that have kept us stuck, and to acknowledge the choices that have led us to this moment. Awareness is not about judgment or self-condemnation. It is about truthfully recognizing reality without flinching. It is about saying to ourselves, "This is where I am. These are my habits, my fears, my responses, and my tendencies. This is the life I have created, intentionally or not." When we cultivate this kind of self-awareness, we begin to see that change is possible not because we need to become someone completely different, but because we now understand the levers within our own control, the ways in which we think, feel, and act that either keep us confined or allow us to grow. Awareness illuminates the moments when we are living out of fear, seeking approval, avoiding responsibility, or clinging to old narratives that no longer serve us. It shows us the spaces where we are investing energy in unhelpful patterns and the areas where we could redirect our focus toward more meaningful choices. This kind of observation demands patience and honesty because it is often accompanied by discomfort, guilt, or even shame. Yet, these feelings are not signs to retreat. They are signals that something within us is asking for attention and change. The act of being aware also teaches us to live more intentionally, noticing how our thoughts and emotions influence our actions and how small, repeated choices accumulate into significant results over time. As we practice awareness, we develop a clearer understanding of our priorities, our values, and the life we truly want to lead. We become able to distinguish between what is essential and what is trivial, between habits that support growth and those that perpetuate stagnation. Awareness provides the clarity needed to make conscious decisions, rather than reacting impulsively or allowing external circumstances to dictate our direction. It opens the door to self-reflection, helping us pause before responding, question our assumptions, and examine the underlying motivations behind our behaviors. In essence, awareness transforms our perspective from passive acceptance to active participation in our own lives. Without it, we are at the mercy of forces beyond our control, repeating patterns and blaming circumstances for outcomes that we, in fact, have the power to influence. With it, we gain insight, understanding, and the ability to choose differently, step by step, moment by moment, until the life we have envisioned begins to emerge. Awareness is not a one-time event. It is a continuous practice of noticing, understanding, and responding with intention. It is the first doorway to change because until we see clearly, we cannot act meaningfully. And until we act meaningfully, transformation remains impossible. Small steps create big shifts, and yet so often we overlook the power of the small, consistent choices that shape the trajectory of our lives. We live in a culture that glorifies dramatic transformations, instant success, and overnight miracles, which makes it easy to underestimate the quiet, steady work that real change requires. Transformation is rarely a sudden event. It is the cumulative effect of countless small actions taken over time, each one building on the last, each one a brick in the foundation of a new reality. Every decision we make, no matter how minor it may seem, carries weight. Choosing to speak kindly to ourselves when self-doubt arises, choosing to take one extra step toward a goal, choosing to listen rather than react in a moment of tension. These decisions may appear insignificant in isolation, but they accumulate to create patterns that define who we are and who we become. The problem is that small steps often feel invisible. We want to see immediate results, and when they do not appear, we grow impatient and discouraged. Yet the truth is that transformation works quietly, almost imperceptibly, like a river carving a canyon over decades. The choices we make each day, our habits, routines, and priorities, are the instruments of lasting change. To embrace this process, we must cultivate patience and persistence, recognizing that progress is rarely linear and that setbacks are not failures, but opportunities to recalibrate and continue moving forward. Small steps also build momentum. Each action reinforces our capacity to act again, creating a feedback loop of confidence and growth. The more we choose thoughtfully, the more we internalize the belief that change is possible, that we are capable of shaping our own lives, and that our efforts, however modest, matter. This approach requires mindfulness because transformation demands awareness of the present moment and the choices it contains. It asks us to pay attention to the decisions we make, the energy we invest, and the consistency with which we show up for ourselves. Over time, these small acts accumulate, producing shifts in our habits, mindset, relationships, and circumstances that feel almost miraculous. But the miracle is not sudden. It is the product of persistent, intentional effort. Importantly, focusing on small steps reduces the overwhelm that often paralyzes us at the thought of sweeping change. Instead of being daunted by the enormity of a life we want to create, we can break it down into manageable, actionable moments. Each day offers dozens of opportunities to make choices that align with our values, move us toward our goals, and reinforce the person we want to become. By attending to these moments, by giving them our full presence and intention, we slowly but surely construct a life that reflects our deepest aspirations. Small steps also teach resilience because they remind us that transformation is not about perfection, but about persistence. When we stumble, we do not quit. We learn, adjust, and take the next step. Each small action is a vote for the future we desire, a way of proving to ourselves that change is not only possible, but inevitable if we remain committed. In essence, the power of small steps lies in their ability to transform our internal landscape first, shifting our mindset, our confidence, and our habits, which then ripple outward into tangible results. Transformation is not found in dramatic gestures or sudden leaps. It is built quietly, persistently, and deliberately in the everyday choices that, over time, create profound and lasting change. Courage requires vulnerability, and yet so often we misunderstand what courage truly means. We think of it as boldness, fearlessness, or acting despite danger, but real courage is far more nuanced and far more human. It is the willingness to step into the unknown, to expose our hearts, and to face the fears, doubts, and failures that live quietly within us. Change demands this kind of courage because transformation is inherently uncomfortable. It calls us to leave behind the familiar, even when the familiar no longer serves us, and to enter spaces where we are unsure of the outcome, where we might stumble, falter, or even fail. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is the exact opposite. It is the act of opening ourselves fully to life, of acknowledging our limitations while still moving forward, and of daring to embrace uncertainty with both humility and determination. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we confront the fears that often dictate our decisions, the fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, the fear that we are not enough. We admit that we do not have all the answers, that we will make mistakes, and that failure is not a reflection of our worth, but a natural part of growth. This willingness to face what is uncomfortable creates space for real change to happen, because change cannot occur while we are hiding behind shields, masks, or pretenses. Vulnerability requires honesty, both with ourselves and with others. It asks us to recognize the gaps between who we are and who we aspire to be, to acknowledge the patterns that no longer serve us, and to take ownership of our role in creating the life we want. It is in these moments of vulnerability that courage emerges, not as a loud declaration, but as a quiet, persistent willingness to show up even when the outcome is uncertain. Real change is rarely neat or linear. It is messy, full of setbacks, self-doubt, and moments where giving up seems easier than continuing. Yet courage rooted in vulnerability allows us to persevere through these challenges, because it shifts our focus from fearing failure to embracing growth, learning, and resilience. Vulnerability also deepens our connection to others, because when we allow ourselves to be seen as we truly are, imperfect, struggling, and human, we create the possibility for authentic support, understanding, and collaboration. Facing our fears openly not only strengthens us internally, but also invites others to witness our journey and, in turn, encourages them to confront their own challenges. Courage and vulnerability are inseparable. One cannot exist fully without the other. To act courageously is to risk emotional exposure, to lean into discomfort, and to move forward despite uncertainty. It is to make choices aligned with our values rather than our fears, to embrace the discomfort of growth instead of seeking the safety of stagnation, and to trust that even failure carries lessons essential to our evolution. Every time we confront a fear, speak our truth, or take responsibility for our mistakes, we practice this form of courage. Over time, these acts compound, building not only the resilience necessary for personal transformation, but also the confidence to pursue change with authenticity and integrity. Courage requires vulnerability, because without vulnerability, there is no true risk, no honest engagement with the self, and no meaningful transformation. To change our lives, we must be willing to face the internal storms, to acknowledge our doubts, and to step forward even when the path is unclear, trusting that real growth always lies on the other side of fear. Let go to grow, because holding on to what no longer serves us is one of the heaviest burdens we carry, often without even realizing it. We cling to old habits, outdated beliefs, relationships that drain us, and fears that limit our potential, thinking that letting go will leave us empty or vulnerable, but the truth is that growth cannot coexist with unnecessary weight. When we release what no longer fits, we make space for new experiences, insights, and opportunities that have been waiting for us all along. Letting go is not a single act. It is a practice, a continuous willingness to examine our lives and identify what is holding us back, whether that is resentment from the past, self-doubt, attachments to outcomes, or patterns that keep repeating despite the harm they cause. It requires honesty and self-awareness, because it asks us to confront the parts of ourselves and our lives that we have been avoiding or denying. Many resist letting go because it feels like loss, because it forces us to acknowledge that we have invested time, energy, and emotion in something that may no longer be aligned with our best selves. Yet the irony is that true freedom and growth come not from clinging but from releasing. When we let go, we give ourselves permission to step into the unknown with courage, to explore paths that were previously blocked by fear, habit, or attachment. Releasing is not about giving up. It is about choosing what truly matters, prioritizing what brings life, joy, and alignment with our values. It allows us to invest our energy where it can make the most meaningful difference, rather than exhausting ourselves on things that keep us stuck in cycles of dissatisfaction, resentment, or limitation. Letting go also creates the mental and emotional space needed for clarity and creativity. When we carry unnecessary burdens, our vision is clouded, and our ability to see possibilities is restricted. By releasing what weighs us down, we allow our minds and hearts to open, to imagine, and to act in ways that were impossible when we were holding on too tightly. It is a process that requires patience because letting go often involves grief, uncertainty, and the discomfort of stepping into unfamiliar territory. Yet it is precisely in that discomfort that growth occurs, because growth demands movement beyond what is safe, familiar, or predictable. Letting go is also an act of trust. Trust in ourselves, in the process of life, and in the unseen opportunities that await us once we release what we no longer need. It is an invitation to surrender control, to embrace impermanence, and to accept that life is constantly evolving and that our capacity to evolve must evolve with it. As we practice letting go, we discover resilience because we learn that we are stronger than our attachments, more capable than our fears, and more resourceful than we ever imagined. We realize that holding on too tightly does not protect us but constrains us, while releasing allows us to move with grace, openness, and courage. Ultimately, letting go is a transformative act because it clears the way for new experiences, relationships, and possibilities that align with our authentic selves. It is the gateway to growth, to living more fully, and to embracing the life that is waiting for us when we have the courage to release what no longer serves us and step forward into what truly does. Connection strengthens transformation because change is rarely a journey we can undertake alone. Human beings are inherently relational, wired to seek support, understanding, and belonging, and it is in this shared space that true growth becomes possible. When we attempt to transform our lives in isolation, we carry the full weight of our fears, doubts, and uncertainties by ourselves, which can make progress feel slow, precarious, or even impossible. Connection, on the other hand, offers perspective, encouragement, and accountability, providing a mirror in which we can see ourselves more clearly, recognize patterns we may have missed, and celebrate the steps forward we might otherwise downplay. Support from others allows us to lean into vulnerability with courage because we know that we are not judged harshly for our missteps, and accountability ensures that our intentions are matched by actions. Transformation is messy. It involves setbacks, repeated attempts, and periods of self-doubt, and the presence of others walking alongside us makes it far easier to persist through these challenges. Relationships can act as both guides and sounding boards, helping us discern when to push forward and when to pause, when to hold firm and when to release what no longer serves us. They remind us that the journey toward change is not linear, that we are not failing when we stumble, and that growth often requires both support and honest reflection. Furthermore, connection exposes us to perspectives, experiences, and wisdom that we may not encounter alone, enriching our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. It challenges us to stretch beyond our comfort zones and confront the assumptions or limiting beliefs that keep us trapped in old patterns. When we engage in authentic relationships that foster trust and openness, we learn to communicate our needs, express our fears, and share our successes, all of which reinforce our commitment to growth. Being accountable to someone else adds a layer of responsibility that motivates us to follow through on intentions and to hold ourselves to higher standards, not out of obligation, but because we value the relationship and the mutual journey of growth. Connection also provides a safe space for reflection and learning, where feedback is offered constructively, encouragement is given generously, and empathy creates a buffer against the harsh self-criticism that often sabotages transformation. It is within this relational environment that we develop resilience because the support we receive fortifies us against setbacks, helps us maintain focus during moments of doubt, and reminds us that we are capable of more than we often believe. Shared experiences, whether through mentorship, friendship, or collaboration, help normalize struggle and illuminate the universal nature of growth, reminding us that we are part of a larger human story in which perseverance, effort, and learning are celebrated. Ultimately, connection strengthens transformation because it transforms change from a solitary struggle into a shared endeavor, where encouragement, accountability, and empathy multiply our capacity to evolve. Growth becomes sustainable and meaningful when we recognize that our lives are intertwined with the lives of others, that our courage is reinforced through mutual support, and that the bonds we cultivate along the way not only uplift us, but also inspire those around us to pursue their own journey of change. In every step of transformation, connection is the force that amplifies our efforts, deepens our understanding, and anchors our commitment to becoming the fullest, most authentic version of ourselves. Choose authenticity over perfection, because true transformation and fulfillment come not from meeting external expectations or trying to fit an idealized version of ourselves, but from embracing who we genuinely are, with all our strengths, flaws, and contradictions. For much of our lives, we are conditioned to pursue perfection, to perform, to present a polished image that we believe others will admire or accept. We measure ourselves against standards that are often arbitrary, shifting, or impossible, and in doing so, we disconnect from the deepest truths of our own identity. Chasing perfection creates a life lived on the surface, where choices are driven by fear of judgment, desire for approval, or avoidance of failure, rather than by curiosity, passion, and inner alignment. Authenticity, on the other hand, is about peeling away those layers of expectation and pretense to step fully into the reality of who we are. It requires courage because living authentically exposes us to vulnerability, risk, and the possibility that some people may not accept us, understand us, or agree with our choices. Yet it is precisely in that exposure that transformation occurs, because when we honor our own values, desires, and truths, we begin to live intentionally rather than reactively. Choosing authenticity means listening to our own voice instead of the chorus of external pressures, honoring our own needs instead of constantly prioritizing what we think others want, and trusting that our worth is inherent rather than conditional on meeting some standard of perfection. It invites us to take responsibility for our lives, to make decisions that align with our deepest beliefs, and to take actions that reflect our genuine priorities rather than what is convenient, expected, or socially acceptable. Living authentically also transforms our relationships, because when we show up as our true selves, we attract connections that are meaningful, supportive, and reciprocal, and we naturally distance ourselves from those that thrive on pretense, judgment, or manipulation. It creates a sense of alignment between our inner world and outer life, reducing the tension, stress, and dissatisfaction that arise when we live out of sync with our true nature. Authenticity encourages experimentation and growth because we no longer fear making mistakes as long as we remain true to ourselves. Failure becomes feedback, not a measure of our worth. It allows us to embrace complexity, to acknowledge that we are not defined by a single role, label, or expectation, and to honor the multiple dimensions of our identity, including the messy, contradictory, and evolving parts. By choosing authenticity over perfection, we reclaim the freedom to pursue our own path, to prioritize what matters most, and to cultivate resilience, creativity, and courage. It reminds us that life is not a checklist of accomplishments or a performance evaluated by others, but an ongoing process of becoming, learning, and expressing the fullest version of ourselves. Transformation happens when we release the need to appear perfect and instead embrace the work, struggle, and beauty of being real, because only then do our actions, choices, and relationships reflect the life we were meant to live. Living authentically turns every moment into an opportunity to align with our truth, make conscious decisions, and step boldly into the unknown, knowing that our value does not depend on perfection, but on the courage to be ourselves. Choosing authenticity over perfection is the key that unlocks personal growth, meaningful change, and a life that feels whole, vibrant, and truly our own.